that incredible curly hair and the moustache. He's there, second from the right, um, overseeing one of his amazing scientific experiments to prove the efficacy of yoga. And
that photo is from 1958, when he was in his 60s. He was a dashing figure. Kuvalayananda founded the Kevaliadama ashram. It was not really an ashram. It was a complex of something very much like a health resort. It was a clinic. It was a laboratory. And it was an office for a yoga journal. So on October 8th, 1924, all of that happened on the same day. It really struck me when I was going over my book in preparation for this interview that he was pitching his yoga to people who had money. His ashram was on a hill station, a resort town. He did something very ambitious. So there was also a clinic where people came to be treated with yoga therapy. And he had a laboratory where yoga, aspects of yoga were tested, and in order to prove that yoga had a scientific basis. And he had a yoga magazine, the first yoga magazine that promoted his work. This was a very effective means, all of this was a very effective means of getting the word out about yoga.
I think when I was reading your chapters on Swami Kuvalayananda, what struck me was he had incredible influence, and yet a lot of the things that he did, we just wouldn't stand up to modern scientific inquiry. He followed a lot of principles of scientific investigation, but drew a lot of dodgy conclusions, as you make clear in the book. So is it perhaps more his positive influence in making people think about modern yoga and the health benefits that is the most important thing, and he sets yoga in a direction of inquiry down that route?
He had a lot to overcome. The middle class Indians were repulsed by yoga. They thought of it as self-abnegation, as penance, as mysticism. So they looked down on it. He had to overcome those prejudices.
Mm.
And he did that by saying that yoga was scientific, that it could be scientifically proven to be a fitness and health regime. He also appealed to the cultural nationalism that was prevalent in the middle class in India. This was partly explicit, but mostly implicit. He was saying to people, yoga is India's response to the physical culture movement spreading around the world. It's our indigenous exercise. It's ancient, it's pure. And I think that was a lot of his making yoga attractive to the Indian middle class.
Mm.
I can't give you evidence for this, what I'm about to say. I think once people began to practice yoga, they liked it. They found that it served a purpose in their lives. It didn't matter if it was scientific or not, and it didn't even matter if it was a nationalist endeavor.
And I think there's some parallels here, aren't there, with other important figures in the modern development of modern yoga, like Krishnamacharya, who these are people who are trying to revive something that has fallen drastically out of fashion. And Kuvalayananda, perhaps his success is that he was tapping into an idea that yoga is essentially a science of the body, and that we see that in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. We almost see that in Patanjali's very clinical, precise analysis of the nature of the mind, that yoga has always been based on this experiential evidence, and that gives it rigor. And so he could draw on a lot of tradition to assert that yoga was important and science-based and culturally significant for India and should be celebrated and practiced.
Well, it's interesting that what Kuvalayananda really wanted to prove was not the efficacy of yoga, but its superiority to Western methods of fitness and exercise. In the Hatha Yoga tradition, the yogis did practice asanas and the cleansing and purifying methods of yoga for health reasons. But part of Kuvalayananda's agenda was making yoga available as public health policy.
Mm.
So what in the past had been hermetic, what in the past had been secret, he was presenting to his fellow Indian citizens. But the middle class in India that Kuvalayananda and Yogendra, but more Kuvalayananda, was addressing was also a group that felt under great stress and could pay for having someone alleviate that stress, and could pay for someone could pay for asana classes that provided fitness and health.
Because he had some extraordinary popularity, didn't he, including treating, albeit by correspondence, Mahatma Gandhi and other luminaries. So he did a great job at promoting his work to other elites.
He did a great job of promoting his work. By the way, he saw Gandhi for 2 weeks, and then after that corresponded with him. I think there are some direct influences that Kuvalayananda had on subsequent yogis. In 1924, Kuvalayananda put together about 10 or 12 exercises that became the canon for yoga practice several decades, until BKS Iyengar upended the canon by publishing Light on Yoga with its great number of exercises, great number of asanas. So Kuvalayananda created this canon. S. Sundaram, who wrote the first book about, first manual about modern yoga in 1929, presented the same canon with some variations. Swami Sivananda picked up the canon from Yogendra. Sivananda honored Sundaram as a great yoga teacher. And Sivananda carried on this canon. So it became the the prevalent canon in the 1950s. So that's a direct influence. Kuvalayananda corresponded with the Maharaja of Mysore. At this time, there was a yoga fad in India in the early 1930s. The Maharaja of Mysore was very aware of Kuvalayananda's work in Lanavla and felt that he wanted to present yoga to the royal family. So he hired Krishnamacharya to teach the boys of the royal family. He would not have done that if Kuvalayananda had not popularized yoga. But I think there's a more general influence that Kuvalayananda had, and that was he made yoga acceptable to the middle class elite in India. And that is what allowed Sivananda to form the Divine Light Society. He couldn't have done that unless yoga had reached a certain level of acceptance in India by the middle class elite.
Yes, and that's a very neat connection there to Krishnamacharya, who obviously many would consider as a key figure in the development of modern Hatha Yoga, and he's somebody we'll want to talk about separately in another talk. But thank you, Elliott. That's been absolutely fascinating to hear about Swami Kuvalayananda and today. Thank you very much.